guys for coming. Well, as you said, my name is Ethan Wong.
I'm Spencer Otte.
And we've both been collecting and wearing vintage for about 4 years now.
Yeah.
We wear it on like a semi-regular basis.
And Disneyland, we always take the opportunity to come in full vintage.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've gone to since like one of the first Dapper Days like in 2012.
Yeah, I think we both started going around the same time before we actually knew each other. So.
Yeah, and it actually got us into vintage menswear in the first place. And so, a lot of people come and ask us, where do we get it? How do we make it work without looking too costumey? And so Justin asked us to talk about it today and share it with you guys. So you might be thinking, okay, why vintage? What makes it special and something you can wear, from like Macy's, Banana Republic, something you can find at the mall? Well, Spencer would like to say that the devil is in the details.
So the first thing, you're going to see a lot of patterns and fabrics that you're not going to see for the most part with modern suits. That is mostly because, back then guys tended to wear suits just about every day. So there are a lot of things like, once again, patterns and fabrics. And then later we have details like belt backs, patch pockets, stuff like that. That kind of, allowed guys to have their own unique look,
right?
While still dressing up.
It would kind of be like, you have a formal suit and you have a kind of a casual suit with all the bells and whistles that you can stand out in.
Exactly. Then we have the manufacturing tended to be a little bit more high quality. Guys could not afford to buy, suits every year, so they had to be made to last. So an off-the-rack suit from the 1930s and 40s, that's usually going to have the same kind of, quality that like a bespoke suit would have today.
Yeah, fully custom, Super 120s, Super 150s wool, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and so getting into that right now, the prices, again, if you wanted to get a suit that was the same level of quality as a 30s or 40s suit, you would have to pay thousands of dollars to get it as bespoke. But we pay maybe $250, $300 on average, maybe like at most.
And then you add like a little bit for extra tailoring to kind of make it fit right. But you still get a high quality garment at a much more affordable price. Okay, so. Next, we have where to find it. Now, that's something that I kind of went through when I first came to Dapper Day. I came in like an H&M suit, and there's nothing wrong with H&M. It's a nice place to get kind of a cool suit. But I noticed that these guys were wearing something similar to what we're wearing today, double-breasted suit, cool suits with like a an odd vest. And I said, where did you guys get that stuff? Like, is it custom? Did you guys have to spend thousands of dollars? And they said, no, we know where to find it. We buy it on eBay. There's a whole bunch of vintage sales. And so he invited me, and I kind of got into this whole world of collecting vintage. And so here are some of the places that we get our pieces from.
So there are kind of like vintage stores. That's where it's kind of more curated. That's where you're going to find the best stuff. And so a couple different places. There's Joyride Vintage. That's in the Orange Circle, like 10, 15 minutes away. I go there like every weekend.
Yeah, we're there pretty much all the time.
There's Reese's Vintage Pieces. He is actually here at the Expo. Go check him out.
And he's got one of the largest collections of vintage suits, dress shirts, and ties outside of like a costuming warehouse. It's literally like his whole garage is filled with vintage.
Yep. There's a couple in LA. There's Paper Moon Vintage. That's
actually the first place I went to back in like 2013. First vintage store I ever went to. Super cool.
And then there's this is a new one. It's Monsivis & Co. And in addition to vintage menswear, he also sells reproduction caps and ties.
Yeah, with like super high quality.
Yeah,
straight out of.
I have a couple of both his caps and ties, and they're great.
Yeah, not a sponsored post. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And so next. Once you learn the details of how to source vintage, how to find the really cool vintage pieces, you can go to like flea markets, thrift stores, and even buy them on eBay. And again, we want to make sure that you buy the right vintage, that you're not getting something from like the 80s or 90s. But it definitely helps if you want to get something a lot cheaper, because we consider going to a vintage store to be paying retail, again, like $200, $300. But on eBay, if someone mislabels a suit or they have an auction up, you can get it for $100, and I usually get my suits 100 or less, stuff like that. Again, thrifting, that's way cheaper. Goodwill has prices for suits like $10 to $20, but again, it takes a very keen eye to find it. But you can always try it on, which is a big plus. And then flea markets is something that I started going to. It's cool to find more accessories, maybe like a tie or some sort of like jewelry or something. It's kind of hard to find clothes, but again, it's a cool place to kind of check out, and it's still a lot of fun to do. Cool. And so back when I said about the 80s and 90s, we use a term called true vintage to kind of differentiate again from like the 80s and 90s, because today people kind of call that still vintage. We call true vintage anything made from the 1960s and earlier. That's when you get the high quality manufacturing, a lot of handiwork still made by hand. And so here are some of the cool qualities for that.
So the easiest way to determine how old a garment is through the tags. There's the union tags that refers to the labor union that manufactured them. And then there are just the kind of the brand tags, the designer label tags. And that is the brand or store that sold them. You're going to find them in mostly natural fibers. You're not going to find any synthetics unless you start going into the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a lot of details that kind of set them apart from modern suits. This varies by decade, but usually they have a little bit of shoulder padding, slightly wider lapels, and a higher rise. That kind of, in our opinion, looks a little bit more flattering, and once again, just sets it apart from modern suits.
And so next here we have some examples of union tags. Now again, like Spencer says, these were the manufacturing labor unions that would sew these kind of into the interior of the men's breast pocket. They kind of look very similar, but if you look very closely, there's some small details that set them apart. Like a 1939 label might be different from a 1940s label. A 1949 label, which actually went into service in the 1950s and 60s, is a little bit different from the earlier ones. Basic rule of thumb is that if it's a lot more cluttered and a lot more blocky, it's earlier, while later ones will be a lot more minimalistic.
And I think we have a link to this image
yeah.
somewhere in your blog, right?
Yeah. All the stuff can be found on the blog in a lot more detail. But again, looking for this stuff in American-made clothing, it doesn't really apply to European stuff, but it basically tells you, gives you a good idea of how old the garment is and when it was manufactured.
Then we have the designer labels. Now they usually don't have like any specific dates on them, but if you have kind of a passing knowledge of graphic design history or typographic history, it can give you an idea of when it's made. Generally, stuff like this you're just gonna know it's gonna be like pre-60s, 70s.
Yeah.
Just because it has, it's a little bit more fun. They kind of have
it's like an artistic quality to them.
They're artsy. And then as we get into the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you tend to get the very kind of minimalistic, just like,
it's kind of corporate.
Yeah,
exactly. So lining is another good indication of not only just vintage, but a good quality made garment. Most suits today and probably like 80s and 90s will have full lining. This refers to kind of the shiny fabric found on the inside of the jacket. And a lot of vintage ones, especially pre-1960, will be half-lined or have no lining at all. And the reason that we say it's a quality-made garment is because you can't hide any imperfections, any mistakes in the seams and the creation of the garment. And also, it's technically an extra layer. So again, if you're wearing like a warmer suit, it'll have full lining. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a summer suit, you want something that's half lined or no lining, just so the garment will breathe better and get a little bit more airflow.
And so, like we said, when you're getting something, if it's made after the 60s and 70s, generally it's going to have a tag that says exactly what fabric percentage it's made of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We recommend you try to stick to the natural fibers, stuff like cottons, linen, silk, wools, of course, and then again in the 60s and 70s you can find a lot of polyester. We recommend you just avoid that because it does not breathe well. It just looks cheap. It feels fake, and it's just kind of uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. One good indication of vintage, again, quality garments in general, are classic patterns. Again, these kind of set your garment apart from something that you normally see. Because when you walk into the mall, you mainly have the more corporate suits, navy blue, black, charcoal. And like Spencer says, back in the day, when you wore a suit every day, you wanted something a little bit more special, something to stand out. So in the front, on top here, you've got kind of a plaid. This particular plaid is called Prince of Wales check. You've got herringbone, which is kind of a repeated chevron pattern. Houndstooth over there in the corner, window pane, which is a kind of a more minimalistic version of plaid, a fleck, which is kind of cool because from far away it looks solid. When you get closer, you can see that there's got a little bit of yellow threads, reds, different color blues kind of sewn in there, and then you've got the classic pinstripe and chalk stripe.
Very businessy.
Yeah, very conservative.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's something that I haven't found a lot in a lot of other vintage menswear blogs and just menswear in general, but it's about the buttoning stance. Now, the buttoning stance refers to the place where you fasten your jacket. On a 3-button jacket, you guys should know it's the middle button, the second button, or if it's the 2-button suit, it's the top button. Now, throughout the eras, the place of the buttoning would change, but you can see here in the 1940s, these, I think they're Yale college students. The buttoning stance is kind of right in the middle of the jacket. It provides a very flattering figure, kind of like got that hourglass shape. And then you compare that to Leonardo DiCaprio.
Who looks like Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he's got like heavy shoulder pads and kind of like his buttoning stance is very, very low. You'll see this a lot in like the late 50s, but especially in late 70s to the early 90s kind of garments. And it's just, we don't think it's really that flattering because, again, you want to be kind of a bit more proportional. And, if his jacket just kind of buttoned like right there, it would have been a lot better. And when you compare the two, I think that the 1940s Yale students look a lot more classic. And, if you just, made a little bit more adjustments, it's not that different of someone that's well-dressed today. Okay, and lastly, we have large or wider lapels. Again, this kind of varied from era to era, but mostly what you see in most stores today, they're kind of a slim lapel, maybe about like two and a half inch lapels. And this one is a 1940s jacket. It's like approaching almost 5 inches, but we think it not only does it look a little bit different than what you normally see, but it kind of provides that kind of got that V shape, and with a natural buttoning stance right in the middle, it doesn't look out of proportion. And it's kind of got that classic look. All right.
So now we're going to talk about fit because it does not matter. We're going to talk about this a lot. It does not matter how cool your suit looks. If it doesn't fit right, it's not going to look good.
Yeah, exactly.
So here are the basics to fit. I spent like the first 2 years of being into vintage just buying stuff regardless of whether or not it fit, and I ended up wasting a lot of money for suits that I do not wear anymore. The most important thing is you need to make sure the shoulders fit right. If the shoulders don't fit right, there's nothing that can be done about it, and it's just not going to look good. Yeah. The jacket, you don't want it to be too long or too short. The general rule of thumb is just have it cover your seat. The jacket sleeves should not go further than your wrist. Then we have, so the jacket should not be tight, but we don't want it to be loose. So just so it gives you kind of a more subtle hourglass. The button shouldn't look like it's about to pop off, stuff like that. Same thing for the trousers. The trousers. We don't want them to be really skinny, skinny fit, but they also shouldn't be
it's also up to personal preference. Yeah. The 60s were a lot slimmer than earlier, but again, they should fit right and be comfortable.
And then this last one is really up to personal preference, but
we're pretty much sticklers on this.
Yeah, so we believe that the best length of pant is a slight break or a no break, and that is where the pant is just kind of hitting the top of your shoe. It's not like, the fabric's not kind of like creasing at all. Yeah,
exactly. And so here's some examples of illustrations in the 1930s and 40s. You can see that the shoulders fit spot on. There's no rumpling. It's not too tight farther in or extended. There's got an hourglass figure across all three of these guys. And the pants, like we said, they rest just gently on the top of the shoe. Maybe a slight crease there for like a very, very slight break, but you can see that it's a very clean look. And a lot of people think that vintage is baggy. You got zoot suits, and while that is definitely a look from the era, most of the time guys look like this. And if you don't believe us, here are real guys wearing it back in the 1930s and 40s. You've got Jimmy Stewart here with pretty much a perfectly cut suit. You got guys in the 30s wearing fitted jackets. There's no pulling at the buttons here. Pants, they break very gently, but not too much. And you've got a picture of guys in the mid-20s from Australia, again wearing some just perfect pants. I would marry these pants. But yeah, basically that's kind of the rule of thumb there.
Okay, so you should know what you can and can't fix with a suit. If you get something and it doesn't fit perfectly at first, that's okay.
Yeah,
we have to get almost everything tailored.
I'm at the tailor like twice a week.
And I can't afford to do that. So, so the first thing of course, you can, if the pants are a little bit tight or a little bit big, that can be pretty easily fixed.
Yep.
Same thing for the coat sleeves and the pants. You can shorten them as much as you need. Let them out usually inch or two, 2 inches.
Yeah.
You can take in a jacket and you can let it out. Usually there's about an inch allowance for that. We don't recommend doing this a lot unless you really, really trust your tailor. You can shorten a jacket by about an inch.
Yeah, because again, a lot of some vintage garments are a lot longer than what you'd expect. I mean, as kind of a shorter guy, I've kind of run into this problem.
I don't have that problem.
No, he doesn't. He's like 6 feet tall.
Yep.
But I do get my stuff shortened. Again, just an inch or less.
Otherwise, it just kind of
throws it off. It kind of gets too close to the buttoning stance, and again, that's Buttoning stance is very important because it shows the balance of the jacket.
And then of course you can also taper the leg. So
Yep.
if you don't want them super wide, you can take them in a little bit.
Exactly.
Again, you can't fix shoulders. Nothing that can be done about that. It's
Nope.
impossible. You can't lengthen the jacket even after you shorten
Yeah,
it.
they don't really leave anything extra in there. So if you shorten it, that's you're playing it close to the chest there if you really want to do it.
And then you can't alter the rise of the pants.
Yeah.
So if they have a low waist, there's not much that can be done there.
We wear high rise trousers all the
Mhm.
time, and so some guys ask us, "Oh, where can we get it? Can we tailor our pants to do that?" And it's something you just have to buy and then get later. So.
And so here you can see, this is how you're going to be able to tell how much you can let out a garment. The coat, which is quarter lined right there, so that way you can immediately see how much there is. There is a seam in the center, and then there are also the seams on the sides. Generally, you're going to have an inch, 2 inches at most.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, but generally it's just going to be an inch. And then we have the pants, so this is a lot easier to see. It's just on the center seam in the back, and that's usually 2 inches, maybe 2.5.
Right, yeah. So usually the rule of thumb, 1 or 2 inches when you're buying a jacket. Even applies to off-the-rack clothing at a modern store. If something doesn't fit quite right, you can get it tailored. If it's anything more than that, you might have to try a different size.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So again, we're sticklers on pant length, and here's kind of an extreme case. This is a 1970s suit that I got, and you can see, it fits well through the thigh. It's not too crazy, but right here is where the big problem is. I know most people don't have them that long, but you can see the importance of tailoring right there. They end just above the shoe. I added a cuff that adds kind of a bit more drape, so they hang and have that nice line through the center of the leg. And I got them tapered just a little bit, but they're not too skinny. And here's a good case study, doing everything we just said into practice. This is a 1960s Brooks Brothers suit that I got on eBay for $100. And see, the jacket isn't too bad. The pants not too bad, but when you go to the tailor, you can just make it look perfect. There's a little bit more waist suppression in the jacket there. It's shortened just a little bit. Again, nothing more than an inch. Still looks proportional. There's no pulling at the button here, and the pants again are hemmed perfectly with a cuff.
So this, in our opinion, is kind of the perfect fit for a suit. This is what you can aspire to. So you can see that the coat has just a little bit of the waist suppression, but the button's not pulling, doesn't look too tight, and then we can see the pants. Look how clean those are.
Look at that straight line.
Yeah, straight line, no break. They have the cuff. And fun fact, I own a suit almost identical to that. So.
But we didn't wear it today because we thought that'd be kind of weird.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, basically that's. And this is like a 1960s Brooks Brothers sack suit. Again, Brooks Brothers is actually here today as well. They make some really great stuff.
Yeah, just a really quick side note. If you're going for vintage, if you can find a Brooks Brothers #1 sack suit made before, that one right there, made before the 1970s, the design did not change from the 1910s up until the 70s, and so you can.
They're pretty classic. Yeah, 3 buttons again, just wide lapels. You can wear this anywhere. You can wear it to Dapper Day, you can wear it to work, And it's not just brown, they had them in a variety of different colors. Okay, so again, we wear vintage on a pretty much a regular basis, and so we get a question like, again, how do you wear it without looking like a costume? And so here are some good tips, because again, the details matter.
Yep. So once again, if it doesn't fit right, it's just not going to look good. So make sure that it fits right. Second thing, make sure you wear something that's appropriate to the weather. I really like tweed suits, but I put them away during the 9 months of the year, just because if you're wearing a heavy tweed suit or a flannel suit when it's 105 degrees out, the suit might look good, but you're just going to look kind of silly.
Right.
So I invest in a lot of cotton suits, linen suits, stuff like that, that look great when it's hotter outside. We're going to get into this in a second, but when you're mixing patterns. The secret of that is just avoid similar scales. Mixing patterns is a really, really great way to kind of just do an easy vintage look. Color combinations, make sure they don't clash with each other. They should complement everything nicely. And then when it comes to accessorizing, this is just us personally. We like to kind of keep it subtle.
Yeah, maybe get a watch. A collar bar is a great way to be vintage. It's very easy, just add it on. Tie bar, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you don't. We've seen modern guys kind of wear a lot of stuff. Just kind of go easy on it, but if that's your thing to go bold, then by all means go ahead. Okay, so like Spencer said, mixing patterns is really the key to vintage style. A lot of people think because things are black and white, things are very boring, when in reality, guys mix patterns all the time because they wore suits, they wanted to stand out. So here, This guy is wearing a striped shirt with a striped suit and a dot tie. This guy's wearing a herringbone, again, that kind of a multi-chevron pattern, and a striped tie. And I think you can see he's even wearing like a varsity vest going on there. It's really cool. And you can see it in action. My simple shirt ads, I mean, they wore different colors together. You got blue stripes with kind of a repeated white tie there. You got orange with white. Basically, striped shirts. Again, we're going to say this in a second, but we love wearing blue striped shirts.
We both have like 30 of them. Get some blue striped shirts.
Yeah. It really doesn't matter what tie you pick because, depending on the pattern and the scale, it'll all work together. And you'll notice that, here you've got kind of a bold stripe and you've got a very minimally printed tie. You've got really thin stripes here and you've got kind of a bigger kind of scale pattern there. Again, you want to complement and not clash, basically. Yeah.
So here are a couple examples of Ethan doing this. Like we said, blue striped shirts. He's wearing in all 3 of the photos. Get some blue striped shirts. The first one, he's wearing a dark brown multi-striped shirt or suit, and he's got a very like subtly striped shirt, like kind of just the stripes are very close together.
Yeah, like a micro shirt.
With kind of a wider, like spaced pattern on his tie. The next one, he's got a little bit of a bolder shirt and tie combo, and so he grounds that with a solid coat. And then we can see the last one. It's a very bold tie, so he wears a very subtly striped shirt, and once again, the solid coat.
Right. And so you can see, again, in countless examples, you look at pictures of guys in the 1930s, not just movie stars, but regular guys. They mix patterns all the time. Like this guy, he's wearing a window pane double-breasted suit with a striped shirt and a dot tie, and I think he's wearing a plain suit here with a striped shirt, and again, another kind of a micro floral geometric print tie. Okay, and so this is something that I like to do because it's very kind of Ivy. Again, it still was done in the 30s, but it's stripes on stripes. And it's a lot more different than wearing a striped shirt with like a printed tie, but I still think it looks good, especially when you pay attention to the scaling. I'm wearing different types of striped shirts throughout all this. There's the blue striped shirt again. But you can notice that the ties are a lot bolder, they're a lot more block striped compared to the shirt. And so it complements and it adds a good accent to the entire outfit. And I think also I'm wearing a lot of plain color of the jackets here, and let the tie and the shirt be the kind of the star of the outfit. And you can see here Jimmy Stewart going with a triple threat. He's wearing a striped suit with a striped shirt, striped tie, and Fred Astaire wearing a striped shirt with a striped tie, and then contrasting that with a kind of a closely patterned herringbone. I'm sorry, houndstooth. But basically, you can get their stripes on stripes is a very vintage kind of thing, and a lot of guys don't do that because they're kind of afraid of mixing patterns, and most guys just wear kind of a plain shirt, plain tie, which is fine too. But if you want to add that extra vintage detail, you can definitely mix patterns.
This next one is my favorite thing in the world. So as Ethan can attest, and if you guys have seen his blog, you can also probably know this. During the summer, I have a pair of like linen cream pants that I wear like every other day because it goes with everything. It looks really great with grays, it looks good with blues, and it looks good with earth tones, browns, stuff like that. And you'll see in the middle, these guys are wearing striped cream pants. So if you're going for a 20s summer look, that's a really easy way to do that.
Right. And so here you have it in action here. There's Spencer's favorite pair of pants. Those linen ones right there. You can see it works really well with a gray jacket. This is probably the simplest one. You wear kind of a cream, maybe khaki. These are linen worn with the blue 1940s jacket. Again, it doesn't look crazy. It looks pretty normal. And then over here you can see it works really well with brown. A lot of earth tones in this outfit. Got that little bit of green there and accenting it with the brown shoes. So if Spencer likes cream pants, I love gray trousers. They're kind of the formal alternative to cream pants. They go with everything, and I just want to emphasize that I'm going for more of like a light gray to medium gray. I think that a kind of a charcoal gray is a little bit too businessy, it's a little bit too dark, it's not as versatile. But you can see here it works with window pane, it works with again blue, and even a light colored jacket. And see, we wear it all the time. Again with navy here, I've been wearing it with white, and you can see it doesn't clash too much. It looks very very normal. And then Spencer here is wearing a a brown check jacket with like kind of a little bit darker gray trousers, but again, it still works together.
Okay. Now we're going to kind of go into like a very general guide to the basic stylings by decade. So if you're going for specifically 20s look or 30s look, this is how to really simply kind of get that.
Right, but if you just want the easy, cheap way, or like kind of a cheat sheet to kind of do it, it's literally the ties. Ties help dictate the era. Not a lot of people know this, but like in the 30s, you can see it's a lot more like stripes. You got a little bit of prints here. It's a lot more tighter. You got some checks here, and that's an easy way to do like a 30s look. Like right now, I'm wearing a 60s suit by making it look 30s with kind of like a small repeated pattern that you've seen in the pictures that we've shown you. If you want to go for like a 40s to 50s look, the ties got a lot wilder, a lot shorter actually as well. But we call it the swing bold era. When guys were swing dancing, they had their cool colored ties just flapping around. And then when you get to like the late 50s and early 60s, ties got a lot slimmer. The designs got a lot more minimal, and they kind of got more of a vertical pattern. They kind of draw the eye up. It kind of emphasize that kind of slim figure. And if you've seen La La Land, Sebastian wears a lot of these type of ties.
So the first thing we're going to start out with is the 1920s. It's really kind of hard to get an early 20s look. You can see that one in the middle, just because the proportions were so different. You'll notice the jackets are very slim. The buttoning stance is very high.
It's like above the waist almost.
Yeah, and then the jackets are really long. So that's not, unless you get it custom made, or if you find like an actual suit from the early 20s, it's kind of hard to do that.
Yeah, it's extremely rare to find an actual 20s suit or jacket.
Our friend Blake has like three.
Yeah, he's a very slim guy. He gets to find that.
But later on in the decade, the suits got a lot more like kind of quote unquote modern looking. So if you have a three-piece suit, you can kind of like make it look 20s. Just get a club collar that is just a rounded one. Bonus points if it is detachable. And then you can kind of wear that with a slimmer tie, and they, like Ethan said, wore a lot of stripes, but then also kind of brocade patterns. So this is like a 30s brocade tie, but there was a lot of ties like that in the 20s too. And then the third image, if you really want to go for it, if you get a pair of +4s that really screams 20s, those were kind of the like sporting, casual pants.
Yeah, it's like their casual suits kind of thing. And so my favorite era is the 1930s. It's a lot more classic. We call it the golden era for good reason, because this looks almost, something that you'd see on a daily basis. Again, they're wearing a check tie. This guy's wearing kind of a check tie as well. He's wearing a striped tie. It's very simple. The jackets, again, fit pretty perfectly. Normal buttoning stances. It's not like the 20s where it was super high. The jackets have a normal length, and the pants, again, are hemmed pretty perfectly right there. I mean, they might be a little bit wider than what you're used to. But it's a good look, and so I do this almost all the time. Here we have a modern suit. It's a lot softer than what you'd see back in the day, but I make it 30s with the collar bar. The same shirt I'm wearing today, actually. Cool coincidence. And a kind of a geometric pattern tie. This is a true 30s suit. It's pretty much perfect, I think. It's got the subtle hourglass figure, perfectly hemmed pants. Again, shoulder fit is on point there, sleeve fit perfectly. And I accent that again with the micro stripe blue shirt, hint hint, and a kind of a cool, fun, circular striped tie. And then Spencer's got kind of a more casual look with gray odd trousers, the vest that I'm wearing today, and a brown jacket. And again, you can't really see it there, but he's wearing kind of a geometric pattern tie with a striped blue shirt.
So then when we get into the 40s and 50s, early on in the 40s, everything kind of it was very similar to the stuff that you saw in the 30s, just maybe a little bit more exaggerated. After the war, when there was no fabric rationing, that's when we got into what Ethan said earlier, the bold era. I'm wearing a 40s suit right now, and you can see the shoulders are a lot more padded. There's a little bit more fabric in the jacket. It's not quite as fitted as we saw in like the late 30s. The pants are a lot wider, and the buttoning stance started to get lower. So early in the 50s, that's when it was super low. This is like mid to late 40s.
Yeah, when you see a 50 suit, you'll know. Like it's heavy shoulder padding and just kind of a really drop buttoning stance. Very similar to what the 80s did, but the 80s went all in on the 50s, so they were really crazy.
It was kind of like a caricature of stuff from the 50s. And so then you'll see, sneak preview. Not there yet. There we go.
There we go.
So the easiest way to do a 40s look is to just get a swing tie, because that's, you know, like the first one, Ethan is wearing an actual 40s suit.
You see the extended shoulders there.
Yeah. But because of the tie, it's just, you know, very obviously 40s. Other two, he's not wearing suits from the 40s. But again, because of that tie, it just, you know, it's something that really screams this is from the 1940s.
Yeah, it's a lot different, again, from the 30s where things were a lot more geometric. I mean, people, they had fun designing these ties.
Yeah.
Okay. So next we have here the 1960s. We call this like the Mad Men era or the Ivy League era. These suits were a lot different than what you see earlier. They kind of rebelled, I guess, against the kind of the bold look. The jackets got a lot more minimal design. They got a little bit longer, and they don't really have a lot of waist suppression. The lapels got a lot smaller. They weren't as wide as they were before, and they opted for 3 button jackets as opposed to 2. And you'll see that they're wearing button-down collars. We call them OCBDs, for Oxford cloth button-downs. It's something that's very Ivy, very 60s. And you see that the shirts are pretty much all plain. They're not wearing blue striped shirts. You know, they kind of add the character by adding striped ties. You know, very corporate-ish looking, and even plain ties. And so one of the best ways to do that is just going with a striped tie and a suit or a jacket that's got very slim lapels but not too small. In the first one, I'm doing stripes on stripes with a 3-button gray jacket. Here I'm wearing this exact same suit with an Oxford cloth button-down collar and a striped tie. I don't know if you guys have seen Mad Men, but Lane Price wears a lot of like odd vest, contrasting.
That one's called Tattersall.
Yeah, that kind of cool check pattern. And then Spencer's kind of got a bit more like a young collegiate look with a subtle plaid jacket with a button-down collar and a striped tie. And something that you'll notice that's a lot different is that the shoulders are not padded like they were before. They were very natural shoulders, very soft. And the jacket doesn't have as much of a body as they did before, but it still looks cool, and it's still a great way to do like a 60s kind of look.
So we're going to leave with some closing thoughts. So first thing, if you have, you know, if you don't want to wear a full suit, maybe you have a couple cool sport coats and you're like, I don't know what to wear with this. If you invest in some cream pants or white pants and gray pants, like
you're covered.
Yeah, you're set, like for life. Everything goes with those.
Next, a white pocket square, which you can see on Spencer and me, and probably almost all the images that we did. It really elevate the outfit. I know, there are still floral pocket squares.
I wear a lot of floral pocket squares.
Yeah, I know. But if you're in doubt, just throw on a white one. It goes with pretty much everything.
And it's just like, you put a little bit more thought in the outfit. It's like a step above.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So we didn't talk about this much. We cuff all our pants. That was pretty standard up until like the mid 60s.
We lost cuffs with bell bottoms.
Yeah, it's not something that you don't really see as much anymore. But we think that the cuffs really just kind of, they help the pants drape a little bit better, and they just look a little bit cleaner. We really like them.
Right, yeah, it's a really simple alteration to do. And, I do them even on my chinos. They kind of add that elevated look. Next, again, trouser fit and shoulder fit is really important. Shoulders you cannot fix, and trousers, again, you don't have to go with a very minimal break if you don't want to, but we think, it looks very clean, and you can see in the images that we showed you, it was pretty standard through the 30s, 40s, up until the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't wear suspenders on a belt. They both do the same thing, and it's kind of redundant.
Right.
So just choose one or the other.
Right. And lastly, just to be comfortable, Spencer and I would not dress up as much as we do if we weren't comfortable in what we were wearing. Again, this applies to wearing, don't wear tweeds in summertime and don't wear linen in the wintertime, Just dress to be comfortable, and it even applies to like how you style yourself.
Exactly.
We want you guys to be confident in what you're wearing, and if you're proud of the outfit, then it doesn't matter. You'll be fine.
Like our kind of philosophy when it comes to dressing up is once you find your own personal style, if that's what you like, roll with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because Spencer and I kind of do sometimes we do modern interpretation of vintage, or or mixing and matching, and it's up to us. We really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think we actually had just one more slide.
Oh, we did have one more slide.
But okay, we'll just say it. So if you want to follow us on Instagram.
Right. My Instagram is Ethan M. Wong.
I'm Spencer DSO.
And you guys can ask us questions whenever you want. We answer everything all the time. It's really, we're going to be at the park tomorrow, so if you want to say hi, you can say hi if you want.
Ethan has a blog.
Yeah, it's Street Exprezza. It's basically, it's right there. I talk about vintage clothing, modern clothing, how to, kind of tailor it, kind of the cool stuff I find.
And
It's basically
I help.
everything, and he helps.
Yeah.
On the sidelines. No, I'm just kidding.
And then we just launched a podcast that is Style and Direction. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's basically this, like, except you can't see us.
Right.
So,
basically we talk. It's about every 2 weeks we're gonna release something, and it's not only us discussing menswear, but also getting cool guests that we think are cool, like Benny that we talked about earlier, the hat makers, like getting some of the stories that you don't normally see out there, like in GQ or something.
And so now I think we have time to take a couple
questions.
So for any additional questions, actually, we have about 10 minutes, but then if we want to keep going on, we can continue outside.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But please give a warm round of applause to Ethan Wong and Spencer Otte. That was really informative. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, oh, and don't worry, like on my blog, literally, the most recent article is kind of a compilation of the different stuff that I've written about all.
It's just a more in-depth version of this.
Exactly, yeah, we go into a lot of pictures. So
we'll take a few questions here.
Okay.
Can you just talk a little bit about shoes as far as like how those, like what styles do you... Can you talk a little bit about shoes and like what styles do you think fit the eras that you were discussing specifically in terms of like two-tones, brogues, etc.?
Right, okay, so shoes I think haven't changed as much as like, jacket fits.
Like this is just, minimalistic shoes tend to work for everything. I have a pair of like Johnston & Murphy shoes from like probably the 80s that are just very simple with a cap toe, and those those fit.
So basically, wingtips, cap toes, they kind of work with everything.
When it comes to stuff like this, I usually just wear my Spectators with kind of more fun, bold outfits like this.
Right, yeah, because once you get to the part where you kind of want to mix eras, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and because Spectators were worn in the 1910s, onwards. So if you want
to
wear them,
until the 60s, yeah. So, but I think if you do like that rockabilly look in the 50s, that's kind of more two-tone thing. I think movie stars kind of warm, but again, it's up to personal preference whether you want to stand out with your shoes or not. Again, shoe design really hasn't changed. We want you to find Goodyear welted shoes. I get my shoes on eBay. Same thing with vintage. Or even thrifting if you're lucky and you find the size. Like these were like $10 and they turned out to be like $100 pair of like Florsheims, and they're very great quality. They've stood the test of rain in London. So if that doesn't tell you how good these are, then I don't know what to tell you. But basically, I hope this answers your question regarding shoes. Yeah. Any other questions?
We have time for more questions.
Oh, cool.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any book recommendations?
Shoot! I have a bunch of coffee table books. It's called like the Dandy's Guide to Dating Vintage Menswear. That's a great reference.
You can find it on Amazon, I think.
Yeah,
right?
And then this is a vintage store in London, the Vintage Warehouse, something like that.
Yeah. They
put out a couple coffee table books. That's less informative and more like check out these cool clothes.
Right. We mainly get our information on the internet. There's a couple of Tumblrs that we follow, and again, getting into this there's actually a whole community of people who dress vintage. I don't know if you guys have seen them out in the Expo, but we get together a lot, and asking these people questions, kind of like this, it's the best way to learn.
So wait, really quick, this is, if you're looking for book recommendations, this is like the holy grail. It's really hard to find, and it's like the Esquire Guide to Menswear of the 20th Century.
Check your local libriaries, because
that book has been out of print since like the 70s.
And if you find it on eBay, it's like $500.
But a lot of local libraries have them.
Yeah, they literally go into the history of every era, which jackets were popular when.
It's really, really in depth.
We actually found
a tome.
one.
It's a huge.
It's huge. We actually got our hands on it at my old university's library, so we were able to actually look at it. It's really, really in depth. But of course, if you want just kind of general style stuff, like Alan Flusser does stuff. He has a book, I think, like Dressing the Man. He has some illustrations that we showed you guys. He talks about how to apply them. Some of it's kind of dated because it came out like in the 80s or 90s, but it's still a good source of information. Bruce Boyer, he's a menswear kind of historian, writer. Again, another great book, good author on menswear. And there's some, I think, maybe a costuming shop or some art stores might have.
So a lot of theater places, they have books on like different guides to different eras. I'm going to be honest, for the most part, they're not great because a lot of them are just like illustrations, and they're like, this is a 70s interpretation of clothes from the 30s. But there are a few that have actual photos, and those are usually
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Again, if you're looking for inspiration, try and look for Life magazine pictures. People from the actual Jimmy Stewart, Fred Astaire. We don't really trust movies a lot because we kind of think of the Gatsby movie. While it's a fun
Recent
film.
movies we're talking,
Recent movies. It's 2012's vision of what the 20s looked like. So again, it's not as accurate. Even the old Gatsby movie with
Robert
Redford is literally a 70s interpretation of what the 20s were. So if you want to see actual stuff, look at the real people. Yeah. Does that help answer your question? Cool. Thank you. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about socks going along with shoes?
Gotcha. Okay. So socks. There are some illustrations. Oh, we wish we should have put some on there.
Oh man, yeah.
But mainly, I think argyle and striped. I think were the main stuff. I mean, guys,
yeah, because they did. I don't know what it's called, but it's this pattern where it's a solid sock, and then they just kind of have a stripe down the side.
Yeah,
that was really common.
Yeah, it's a very kind of a minimalistic kind of a thing.
I mostly wear either solid socks like that. I have a couple argyle socks, and then I really like horizontal striped socks.
There you go. Yeah, those are pretty much classic. And if you want something easy, if you don't want to think about it, I like navy blue socks go with everything. Maybe even a dark gray.
Yeah.
Because I think we like to. This is just our personal style, but we prefer to kind of have our tie and our shirt or even our suit be the main star of the outfit. And if you're doing kind of a really bold outfit, it might not be as good to have really patterned sock that goes with it. But again, that's up to personal preference if you want to.
What era were hold-ups, sock hold-ups?
Oh, those.
Oh, well, those I think were just kind of worn
throughout the whole.
Yeah, throughout.
Yeah, it was kind of a cool thing to have, tie bars and everything. I think as pants got slimmer, I don't think they wore them as much. So maybe the mid '60s, and when you get to bell bottoms, I don't think guys wore them with their disco suits.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're still a really cool accessory. It's kind of subtle. It's kind of just
Yeah,
I feel cool for wearing it.
I have one, and I would wear it more often. Except it's actually vintage, and the elastic is falling apart.
Right, and I'm sure that there are plenty of reproduction people that make them.
Yeah.
Probably a lot better. So they help them, help them stay up. It's a cool detail. Yeah. So cool. Yes.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of places to find repro women's stuff.
Right.
Do you know of anywhere to find repro men's stuff?
Okay.
Simon James Cathcart.
Yeah, SJC. If you look that up on Instagram.
Yeah, he's a relatively new seller. When he said, Spencer's wearing that vest that I'm wearing now, it's not the same vest.
We don't share clothes.
We both got one because it's so cool.
Yeah.
He's in England. It's a really small operation. It's basically him.
It kind of operates kind of like a Kickstarter where he makes them after a certain number of orders come in. They're really good. They just came out with a 1930s reproduction suit
and a 1930s reproduction work suit, which I got because it was $200 cheaper.
Yeah, but there are people who do it. I think there's a few we don't really know too much just because we buy a lot of true vintage because sometimes reproduction can get a little bit more expensive. It's almost like buying a custom suit more often than not.
But yeah, SJC is making the best stuff out there right now.
Yeah, and it's actually designed by a lot of our friends who have the actual garments and then they
take measurements, take patterns.
Exactly. So yeah, he's one of the best ones. Yeah. Any other?
We have time for one more.
Make it good. Yeah, right in the back. Oh, right. For basic suits and jackets, stuff like that. We really recommend a blue suit. I think just kind of gets it right out of the bat because it's the easiest one to wear separately. Navy blue trousers by themselves look really good. The jacket goes with literally everything. I would say, a gray suit is secondary. Some guys say do the gray suit first because it's a little bit more conservative.
Yeah, we both like navy a little bit more.
Yeah, just because I think it works better with colors. It's a little bit more deeper. And then, of course, once you get the gray and the blue suit, you can just kind of mix match the trousers and the jackets together. Third, I would say a brown suit.
Yep.
That goes with everything.
Yeah,
I love
we both wear brown suits every day.
Yeah, at his work they call him
they just so I work at Men's Warehouse. I'm the only guy that wears brown on a regular basis, and so every time we get in something that's brown, they're like, "Hey Spencer, look at this.
You think this is cool?"
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, brown trousers also go with everything. Brown jackets go with everything. I don't think we talked about this too, but brown jackets are very uncommon to find out in the wild. So when you wear it, it looks like it's vintage.
Oh yeah.
Whoa, because again, guys mainly wear navy blue and gray. So when you wear it, it stands out. And you can also wear the jacket with jeans too if you want.
Yeah.
Kind of got that sweet professorly look, kind of stuff like that. And for a fourth, I don't really. We wear a lot of gray, blue, and brown. So
yeah, it's cream.
if you're cream suit for summer, then you can wear the pants. by themselves.
Yeah.
But if you want to do after that, I think experimenting with jackets, different patterns,
Yeah.
doing the same colors and different patterns. Like, oh, you want to do a pinstripe navy blue suit,
Mhm.
you could do a window pane brown suit, stuff like that. I think will kind of round out your collection.
Yep.
Cool. So.
So
All right, I guess
yeah,
that's it.
that's all we have time for. But I mean, we're not doing much. So.
Yeah, so if you guys want to talk to us afterward, ask
Yeah.
questions more, we're free.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Ethan and Spencer.